Chapter 16. Day 2, 1000 hours. Cameron rubbed his palms together eagerly as he looked at the workstations around him. He only had a few hundred experience points to go until he hit level 10 and was excited to get his new armor equipped. He felt like the stat bonuses and extra armor points would really put him over the edge. "Okay, Cameron," he said to himself as he glanced from the chem station to the smithing bench. He felt the potions were the items that he could actually use the most as a tinkerer, but the smithing bench might be a quicker route to achievements. He stroked his chin, feeling a bit of natural stubble, and hummed gently to himself. "Hey, man!" The sound of Pag's voice interrupted Cameron's thoughts and made him jump. He quickly turned around to see the young man now sporting a fire-engine red flat top and a pair of diamond-encrusted sunglasses. "What the fuck?" Cameron burst into laughter at the image of the boy. "That's what you spent your happy coins on?" "No," Pag replied, his voice tinged with disappointment. "I also got this!" He held up a red glowing kriss and smiled widely. "It adds 2 to my intelligence and is fire imbued. Plus, it has a unique sacrifice ability which replenishes my health and armor as I kill people with it." "Oh, psycho. Good deal, kid." Cameron shook his head and turned back to the workstations. "What did you bring me?" "Lots of stuff," Pag said as he dropped a large duffel bag at Cameron's feet. "Leather, iron ingots, bottles, herbs, and flowers. Plenty of stuff for you to experiment with." "I only need a couple hundred experience points," Cameron informed him. "Any suggestion as to what would get me there quickest?" "How many nuts do you have?" Pag asked. 2, Cameron replied, sporting a stupid wide smile. Pag frowned and shook his head. "You know what I mean." "What kind of nuts?" Cameron inquired. "Ability nuts," Pag clarified. "How many do you have?" Cameron opened his inventory and checked. "Looks like I have 12. "Awesome," Pag smiled. "Okay, so if you don't mind using a couple, we can get you to level 10 really fast. Up until level 10, you get your ability level times 10 experience points for armor you craft. So, if you have a level 5 armor crafting ability and you're level 9, then you'll generate 50 experience points per piece of armor. Now, once you hit level 10, the experience points will halve until you get your ability level over 10. So, if you're level 10 and you have an armor crafting ability of 11, you will earn 110 experience points. But, if you have an armor crafting ability of 10, you will only earn 50. Does that make sense?" "God damn, kid." Cameron shook his head. "That's a lot of information." "Yeah, I know." Pag chuckled lightly to himself. "So, just use 4 of your nuts in armor crafting." "But what if I don't want to use them on armor crafting?" Cameron asked. "What if I want to save them for something else?" "Then do that," Pag replied, scrunching up his face. "You'll just have to craft 20 pieces of armor instead of 4. I mean, do you plan on crafting armor in the future?" "I have no idea," Cameron replied. "Right now, I mainly just want to focus on abilities that'll keep me alive." "Your call, man," Pag said. "Either way, we have enough ingredients to get you to where you need to be." Cameron thought it over for a moment. With his inventory still open, he went ahead and ate the 2 stat nuts he had saved, focusing them on his intelligence and raising it to 36. He also popped one of his skill nuts and maxed out his light armor skill at level 20. He stared at his ability nuts for a moment and finally relented. He ate 4 of them, focusing on his armor crafting ability. "All right," Cameron begrudgingly said. "I raised armor crafting to 5. "Cool," Pag answered. "Now you just need to craft 4 items and you should hit level 10. Cameron stepped up to the smithing station and opened his crafting menu. He grabbed 4 pieces of leather from the duffel bag and stuck them into one of the ingredient boxes of his menu. The output box showed a question mark, but also an arrow that pointed downward. He tapped the arrow out of curiosity, and it showed a list of the blueprints that he had unlocked. Currently, only common leather belt was on that list. Cameron opted to go with the question mark to unlock more blueprints. He tapped the icon and the smithing began. A countdown of 8 minutes appeared. 8 minutes? Cameron snapped. "I thought it was 1 minute to craft armor." "No, it seems that every 5 levels of your ability adds another minute to the time. Now that you're crafting level 5 armor, it takes 2 minutes per piece." "Well, that's shitty." Cameron groaned as he leaned against the tree that towered over them. Cameron looked at the young teenage boy next to him and cocked his head. "So, you're the youngest person I've seen here so far. How on earth did a kid like you get to a place like this?" "I don't know how I got here yet," Pag mumbled. I just know that life was probably pretty terrible before I did. Cameron raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. What do you mean? Well, my memories have been great up until I turned about 9, Pag replied. The last memory I had was about a bunch of men taking me from my family and putting me on a boat. I haven't seen anything since, and I really don't want to know any more past that. I kind of wish I could change classes to Gatherer so I don't gain any more intelligence points, but my guide says I can't do that unless I find a respect stone. Respect stone, Cameron repeated. What's that? Apparently it's a very rare item that takes away all your nuts and abilities and class and everything and allows you to start over. You keep your level, but you get to pick everything all over again. That's interesting, Cameron said. Definitely a unique sort of thing. Not really, Pag snorted. I mean, it's an item or skill you can find in most RPGs. RPG? Cameron repeated. What's that? Oh God, you're such a loser. Pag shook his head and closed his eyes. Role-playing game. That's what RPG stands for. RPGs typically have classes and stats and skills and everything you can find here. We are currently in an RPG. Oh. Cameron nodded his head. Yeah, I didn't really play games back home. Actually, I'm not exactly sure what I did back home, but I know I didn't do that. So, are you some kind of nerd or something? I'm about as much a nerd as you are a jerk, Pag huffed. How about you not be a dick? Does that sound okay? Whoa, I'm not trying to be, Cameron replied. Sorry, I didn't mean to push any buttons. Leather gloves, level 5, crafted, plus 50 experience. Yeah, I get it. Pag looked up at Cameron and raised his eyebrows. No harm done, man. Just when jocks like you call people like me a nerd, it's concerning. Jocks, Cameron repeated with a snort. What makes you think I'm a jock? I mean, Pag cocked his head and narrowed his eyes on Cameron. What position did you play on the football team in high school? Well, Cameron replied uneasily. Kicker. Oh, okay, my bad, Pag nodded. You're only barely a jock. Hey, I was a valuable asset to the team, Cameron shot back, furrowing his brow. Special teams are important. We decide whether games are won or lost. Special teams. Pag shook his head and belted a laugh. There's nothing special about kicking a football. Okay, come on now. Cameron held up his hands in defense. No need to rag on me. Leather belt, level 5, crafted, plus 50 experience. I'm just playing with you, man. Pag smiled mischievously. So, what level is your fireball? How do you know I use fireball? Cameron asked. I heard you talking about it, Pag replied with a sigh. Now, what level is your fireball? 13, I think, Cameron said. He opened his abilities sheet and double-checked. Yeah, 13. You should level that up to 20 with the nuts you have left, Pag suggested. Use the last one in Fire Mastery. Cameron followed Pag's advice and dumped his nuts into Lesser Fireball and Fire Mastery. He noticed that his fireball attack had risen to 78 to 100. He smiled and nodded at Pag, silently thanking him for his advice. Leather gloves, level 5, crafted, plus 50 experience. Level up! Congratulations, your hard work, achievement hoarding and crafting like a madman, has paid off. You have reached level 10. You have obtained 1 stat nut, 3 ability nuts, 3 skill nuts. Please allocate your nuts wisely. Your health and armor have been replenished. Ability, basic melee weapon crafting unlocked. Achievement unlocked. Level 10. Congratulations, you have reached level 10. Keep up the good work. Plus 50 experience. Yes! Cameron pumped his fist into the air and belted an ecstatic laugh. He canceled the 4th piece of armor he was crafting and grabbed Pag's shoulders. Pag screamed and Cameron reeled back, still laughing. We did it! Cameron shouted. I got to level 10! Great job. Pag rolled his eyes and took another step away from Cameron. Welcome to the club, I guess. Cameron wasted no time. He opened his inventory and began swapping out his current armor for the pieces he had purchased in the premium store. Once that was done, he allocated his stat nut to intelligence and used his 3 ability nuts on Fire Mastery. When it was all said and done, he loaded up his stat sheet. Name, Cameron. Class, Tinkerer. Level, 10. Experience, 8,464 of 10,400. HP, 155. AP, 235. Armor, 430. Statistics. Strength, 1. Dexterity, 21. Intelligence, 47. Vitality, 11. Skills, unarmed, 1 of 20. Shotgun, 3 of 20. Light armor, 20 of 20. Pistols, 1 of 20. Primary gun damage, 32 to 72. Secondary gun damage, 36 to 42. Melee damage, 31 to 36. Carry capacity, 75. Run speed, 31. Stat nuts, 0. Skill nuts, 8. Ability nuts, 0.
My God, Cameron whispered as he looked over his new stats. I'm indestructible.
He opened his ability sheet to take a look at his fireball skill. It currently read 109 to 141 damage. Cameron's jaw dropped, and he laughed almost maniacally to himself.
I'm a damn god!
Cameron shouted as his body trembled with excitement.
Nobody can take me now. I'll wipe the floor with them.
Peg snorted a laugh at Cameron's enthusiasm, and a few others approached, curious at all the noise Cameron was making.
What's the deal here?
Gino, the tiny Italian man, shouted. Cameron noticed he had equipped an excessively long beard and was wearing a tricorn pirate's hat, kind of like the one Hank had found. Cameron got to level 10. Peg shrugged.
Exemplary job, Cameron,
Floof declared, clapping his hands together.
And I do say that outfit suits you.
Thanks. Cameron smiled and nodded at the others. I worked hard to get this far.
We've all worked hard,
Alexa, the muse from the river, snapped in response.
You just have a few more subscribers is all.
She had equipped a head of long, glittery pink hair, and her makeup was done immaculately. Cameron raised his eyebrows at her for a moment, noticing that she looked extremely attractive.
Don't let her bring you down,
Frank, now adorned with long black hair and a bushy beard, called out.
We're proud of you, Cameron. You've done a great job. We're happy to know you.
Thanks, everyone. Cameron nodded warmly at them. Y'all are a great bunch of people. Once I find Bernard, I really look forward to coming back and surviving with you guys. Cameron looked around at everyone he had met that day. Though he had only known them for a few short hours, he felt at home in their presence. They were all truly wonderful people, and he was sincere in his words of joining them. The sound of a singular pair of palms slowly clapping against each other suddenly filled everyone's ears. Nobody in their group was clapping. It was coming from the tree line. Everyone fell silent and turned.
Good show!
An Australian accent growled as footsteps neared the group.
Quite proud of you, Cameron. You've come a long way since I bashed your buddy's brains in.
Stephen, the leader of the Slayers, stepped out of the woods and slowly walked towards the group. His outfit and appearance had changed entirely. He wore a sleek-looking set of platinum-colored armor that was smeared in red. He held a vicious-looking horned helmet at his side, and across his back hung a new hammer. Cameron's upper lip curled into a snarl as a fireball formed in his hand. Pag and Jerry, too, formed fireballs, and everyone else raised their weapons. Stephen stopped and wickedly smiled at the group, raising his hands in response. A blue sphere of light surrounded him, a shield of some type by the looks of it, and the rest of the Slayers hurried up behind him. They were all equipped in premium armor.
Tell me, mate, Stephen continued, do you remember me?
Cameron's lip curled with fury at the sight of the man. He hated Stephen for what he did to Hank and the rest of Bernard's party. The fireball burned in Cameron's hand. Every fiber of Cameron's being wanted to charge the man, to kill him and blast his body into oblivion.
I'll take that as a yes.
Stephen laughed.
Look, I admire your progress. I really do. I think you all have done a hell of a job here. Great work, truly. However, I regret to say that this is where it ends for you. I don't believe that is entirely accurate, Floof shouted, pushing past Cameron. Our numbers are matched. You can't possibly hope to make it out of here without a fight. Come, sit by the fire with me. Let us quaff hot drink and discuss this like gentlemen.
No, thank you, Stephen smirked.
I think I'll just kill you now.
At that, Floof's eyes grew wide. He growled and expended all of his AP to raise a wall wide enough to protect the entire group from the volley of gunfire that erupted.
Find cover! Floof shouted. Defend yourselves! Forgo all our work! Your lives are worth more than our constructs!
Smaller walls began forming all around the camp as the builders worked to create defenses with what little time they had. Floof and Cameron briefly locked eyes, and they nodded at each other as they both ran off to take cover behind one of the walls.
"We have to run," Cameron sharply whispered. "We cannot fight them. They're higher level and have better gear." "Strength of body rarely defeats strength of heart, Cameron," Floof rebuked. "Hold fast. Steady yourself. We are capable of surviving this."
An explosion blasted apart the wall they were hiding behind, sending Floof's body flying backwards and knocking him. Cameron, too, fell to his side and gasped as one of the slayers roared and leaped over the wall. He had a sword in his hand and was laughing wildly as he charged toward Cameron.
"No!"
Cameron yelled as he launched a ball of fire at the slayer. The fire hit him square in the chest and blasted him backward, but did not knock him. His armor level was way too high. Another slayer took the first place as Cameron got to his feet. He hurled a fireball at the slayer, missing him. Cameron gritted his teeth as his opponent aimed his weapon and fired. 2 direct hits knocked Cameron's armor down to 300. He dove out of the way of another round and crashed to the ground. As he came to a stop, he flipped to his back and fired another fireball at the slayer. Direct hit. The slayer spiraled backward and Cameron quickly crawled over to Floof. Somebody made a wall in front of them, and Cameron placed his hands on Floof's back to try to revive him.
"You have to join my party," Cameron shouted. "Hurry, leave yours and accept my invite so I can revive you." "I cannot abandon my people,"
Floof gurgled as his life force slowly faded.
"You can do nothing for them if you're dead," Cameron yelled. "Hurry!"
Floof relented and accepted Cameron's invite. With one hand cooking a fireball and the other on Floof's back, Cameron kept his eyes peeled for another enemy. The sounds of screaming and explosions filled the air. People on both sides of the fight were dying, but Cameron knew that the Eternials were taking much more damage than the Slayers. He breathed heavily and fearfully, knowing that there was no way they could win this fight.
"Fall back!" Cameron heard Frank shout. "Fall back! Run for it!" "Go!"
Floof cried as Cameron continued to hover over him.
"My life is not worth it, Cameron! I am just another man! Save the others! You are among the only ones who can!" "Shut up, Floof!" Cameron snapped. "You're almost back! We're gonna make a run for the river as soon as we get to our feet! Do you hear me?" "My people!"
Floof wheezed. The revival completed, and Floof shot up, gasping wildly. Tears filled his eyes as he had come only seconds away from death.
"My people," he repeated. "I have to protect them!" "Your people are strong!" Cameron shouted as he grabbed Floof by the collar. "They can do this! Stick with me! We're heading to the river! Build walls! Protect us! We will save anyone we can!"
Floof was in a daze. He looked around and saw a few of his own collapse to the ground dead. His face trembled and his body shook. Cameron slapped him on the cheek and lifted him off the ground.
"Get a hold of yourself, Floof!" Cameron shouted. "We're going!"
At that, Floof cleared his throat and nodded his head.
"Yes,"
Floof agreed.
I'm sorry."
He got to his feet, and Cameron saw him cast some kind of refresh spell on himself. He shook his head and exhaled deeply.
"Let's go!"
The two quickly rounded the corner, and Cameron immediately threw the fireball he had been cooking at the nearest Slayer. The Slayer was knocked, and as Floof ran past him, he swung his mighty hammer, crashing the raider's skull.
"Floof! Wall!"
Cameron shouted as 2 other Slayers charged them. Floof raised a wall just in time to catch the Slayer's bullets. The duo pressed their backs against their protection, and Cameron leaned around the side and hurled a fireball at the ground in front of the Slayers. The fire exploded, knocking them back, and Cameron pulled Floof forward, heading toward the trees and hoping to get around the fight.
"Everyone's retreating," Cameron reassured Floof as they ran. "They will find safety. Don't worry."
Something slammed into Cameron's chest, knocking the wind out of him and sending him to his back. His armor dropped from full to 250 in an instant, and as Cameron struggled for air, he looked up to see Stephen standing above him.
"Aren't you the little hero?"
Stephen cackled as he raised his weapon to strike again. He brought the head of the hammer down on Cameron's chest, reducing his armor to 75. Stephen threw his head back and laughed, just as Floof charged him. Stephen blew a raspberry and slammed the handle of his weapon into Floof's throat, staggering him. Floof gasped and coughed as he stumbled to his knees, and Stephen returned his attention to Cameron.
"Sorry it had to end like this, mate."
Stephen winced at his own words, feigning concern.
"But it's just the name of the game."
As Stephen was about to bring the hammer down, Cameron heard the whistling of arrows and then a sudden gunshot. Stephen grunted and took a few unbalanced steps backward as a thin, blonde-haired woman leaped from the trees and landed in front of Cameron.
Take Maria, take Floof and go, Jasmine shouted. We will hold the slayers off. Find the others and we will find you when it's all done.
Cameron didn't have any time to argue. He pushed himself up and grabbed Floof's arm, pulling him away. Floof and Jasmine locked eyes for a moment, and she gave him a comforting smile as the rest of her hunters charged out of the woods to join her in fending off the slayers.
Maria!
Cameron shouted as he ran through the woods. Maria, where are you?
Here,
he heard a voice reply. Cameron turned and saw Maria standing there. She had purchased and equipped dark brown hair that she pulled back in a ponytail. Her rifle was shouldered, and she sighed with relief at seeing Cameron alive.
Come on, Cameron shouted. Waste no time, we've got to get out of here.
Maria nodded and joined Floof and Cameron.
You're okay?
Maria shouted as they ran.
You're not hurt?
I'm fine, Cameron shouted back.
We just need to...
Cameron gasped as the trio stopped in a small clearing. Gino, the Italian, was knocked, and Pag sat weeping next to the dead body of Jerry. Cameron felt his eyes well up, but forced it down deep inside him. 3 slayers surrounded the Eternials, and they turned and snarled as Cameron appeared. Cameron wasted no time. He launched a fireball at the closest slayer, knocking him back. Maria opened fire on another, and Floof let out a mighty and furious cry as he charged the third with his hammer. The slayers had been caught off guard. 5 seconds later, another fireball formed in Cameron's hand, and he darted forward, blasting the slayer, who staggered again. The slayer fell to his back, and Cameron pulled out his revolver, emptying its cylinder into his opponent's body. This knocked him, and Cameron pulled out his horny poker, thrusting it through the slayer's face, finally killing him.
Player Carlisle killed, level 9, plus 450 experience.
Cameron skidded to the ground next to Gino. He had no idea how much time the small man had.
Hurry, Gino! Cameron shouted. Join my party so I can revive you!
Gino did as he was told, and Cameron placed both his hands on Gino's back. Maria, having disposed of her target as well, hurried to assist and placed both her hands on Gino's back as well. Soon enough, Floof joined them, and Gino finally gasped.
Thank you!
Gino wept. Tears fell down his face and stuck to his beard.
I thought I was a dead man.
Floof tended to Gino, and Cameron turned to Pag. Come on, buddy, Cameron whispered. We have to go.
They killed Jerry,
Pag cried.
They fucking killed her.
I know, Cameron replied. I know. Just come on. We can avenge her another time. Multiple footsteps charged in their direction. Cameron heard whooping and shouting and urged everyone to their feet.
I can't leave her, Pag sobbed. She was my friend.
Gino hoisted the boy off the ground and threw him over his shoulder. Pag pounded his fists against Gino's back, and the group hurried forward. Gunshots rang out behind them, and everyone grit their teeth with anxiety and terror as they ran as fast as their legs would take them. Finally, they could run no more. In front of them was the edge of a cliff. Beneath them, a wide flowing river. Cameron looked back at everyone and knew they could not stop. He breathed wildly and fearfully at the decision he had to make, and finally nodded his head. "Jump!" he cried out as bullets flew past them and pinged against their armor. "Jump!"